Cinder Fall has been one of the most hotly debated characters in all of RWBY. Over the years, she's drawn much criticism over being too bland of a villain. We first see Cinder Fall as a calm, calculated mastermind in charge of Roman Torchwick's operations. Her power comes to a head as she stages the Fall of Beacon, gets the Fall Maiden powers, and kills Ozpin and Pyrrha. But after she's defeated by Ruby's Silver Eyes, we see a different side of her. In Salem's lair, she isn't the strong, feared, and powerful woman she wants to be. Instead, she's ridiculed by her colleagues and restrained under Salem's watch. This, combined with her disfigurement, is a catalyst for her worst decisions. Until Volume 8. It's obvious that Volume 8 is Cinder's volume. We get Cinder's long-awaited backstory, we get some vulnerability close to what we saw in Volume 4, and she scores some major wins for the villains, getting half of the relics for Salem, killing Penny, and defeating Team RWBY. She seems like she's back in her prime, being as threatening as she was in Volume 3. I admit, Cinder isn't my most favorite character, but I believe Roosterteeth is doing something interesting with her, as seen with her role in Volume 8, and this video will focus on analyzing her past, motivations, relationships, and what this could mean for her future. So let's jump into it. In Volume 8, Episode 6, Midnight, Cinder was a mere orphan from Mistral. She's constantly overworked and bullied by the other kids. Simply put, her life was never a happy fairy tale. On a side note, the orphanage seems more like a trafficking ring, as seen by the tarps covering the truck's tops and how poor its conditions are. It's never explicitly stated, but make it that what you will. Anyway, she's soon adopted or bought by the Madam, and Cinder is forced into even worse conditions at the Glass Unicorn, a hotel the Madam owns. She does practically all the work there, on top of being bullied by her stepsisters and getting shocked by the Madam. Also, none of the guests there question the 10-year-old girl working the hotel, which makes you wonder how prevalent child labor is in Atlas. But it's not until she meets Rhodes that we know her first real goal, freedom. To have the freedom to do whatever she wants, go wherever she wants. It's a simple, poignant wish, made all the more obvious once we know why she stole Rhodes' sword. Plus, I think this original goal of being free was repurposed by Rhodes and later on Salem, but more on the latter later. Rhodes interpreted that as her wanting to be a huntress, so he spends the next few years training her for Atlas Academy. That way, she's able to leave the Madam once and for all. He gives Cinder new hope for her situation, and for the first time, she feels happiness. But although Rhodes had good intentions for Cinder, he still gives her reason to stay and endure the abuse, and there's only so much a child can take. It was just a matter of time before she snapped. And that moment comes when the Madam's daughters find Cinder's weapon. This is a more poignant moment than meets the eye. As RWBY says, weapons are extension of ourselves, practically a manifestation of our souls. So in a way, this is the equivalent of taking Cinder's fragile soul away. And Cinder does what everyone tragically predicts. She uses her strength and power to finally kill her abusive family. It's almost supposed to be a triumphant moment for Cinder, until Rhodes comes in. This is already a tragic turn of events, but it's even more tragic because Cinder expects Rhodes to be happy for her. But Rhodes, bound by the confines of Atlesian duty, prepares to arrest Cinder. If she hasn't already cracked, she certainly has at this moment. The freedom she always wanted is about to be stolen by the one person she cared for, so she reacts with what she knows best, violence. It's clear that Rhodes' betrayal could color Cinder's views on hunters and huntresses, that for all their power and strength, they're still humans, flawed and fallible humans. It definitely explains the speech she made in Volume 3 when Pyrrha accidentally kills Penny.
This is what happens when you hand over your trust, your safety, your children, to men who claim to be our guardians, but are, in reality, nothing more than men. Our academy's headmasters wield more power than most armies, and one was audacious enough to control both. They cling to this power in the name of peace, and yet, what do we have here?
Much of her personal hatred for Atlas is made clear at the crux of the Atlas arc. There's also an underlying theme through this betrayal, that what's legal isn't always moral. Perhaps Rhodes could have done more to free Cinder, but couldn't because of legal regulations or his own morality. It's most likely that the Madam acquired Cinder under the guise of adoption so she can exploit her for free labor. It's never explicitly stated, but the point is this legalized abuse Cinder suffers is another stain on Atlas society. There are the people that create cruelty, and the people who stand by and let the cruelty happen. What good is Atlas if it allows this malice to happen? It adds on to the kingdom's flaws that the previous volumes have shown or alluded to. Who would have guessed that the shining city in the sky holds such darkness within? Obviously, Cinder's background calls back to her fairy tale illusion, Cinderella, the child labor, the abusive stepfamily, the prince, and the fairy godmother. At the very least, it gives context on why Cinder is so obsessed with power. A huge reason why villains become who they are is because society has failed them in some way, or that they're a byproduct of society's worst flaws, and Cinder's no exception. This quote fits her very well. A child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. This is the story of a girl who was utterly failed by the system. Cinder was never the winner to begin with. For her whole life, Cinder has had little to no agency in her life, being subjected to a life of slavery and continuing that enslavement with a different master. This burning desire for power and freedom festered and spread until it all but consumed her. From the moment she murdered her wicked family, she believes that freedom can only be obtained by gaining power, and that power can only be obtained through violence. So, midnight has passed. The madam, her daughters, and the Rose are dead. The old Cinder dies, and Cinder Fall rises in her place. So I'm going to go slightly off track and discuss Cinder's designs throughout the show. Design is one of the most important aspects in RWBY, and pretty much every piece of media. Besides making characters look cool, design shows how they grow and change over time. Out of all the RWBY characters, Cinder has the most outfit changes, having a total of 12 different outfits. This is most likely a reference to her VA, Jessica Negri, a well-known cosplayer, and this reference could also be eluded by Cinder's early skill of weaving dust into her clothes. But among her whole fashion line, I'll focus on her three main outfits: her Beacon, Mistral, and Atlas outfit. I'm also going to reference a great post from my Lord She's a Cactus called The Cycle of Abuse in Costume Design. It shows how Cinder's abuse translates into her main outfits. Some of the details in that post will be mentioned in this section, and if you want to read the whole post, the link is in the description below. Cinder's first outfit, or as I'd like to call it the Sparks, creates quite the impression. It's a short crimson, off-the-shoulder V-neck dress. Along the arms are golden decor that light up when she uses dust and or her semblance. She wears black lace-up shorts under the dress, and she finishes the outfit with glass heels, black glass jewelry, and a blue feather jewel. And on a side note, it's interesting how her tattoo isn't shown on this final concept art. This outfit definitely goes with the femme fatale image the audience has of her. Her whole silhouette also kind of reminds me of Lust from Full Metal Alchemist. Combine that with Jessica Negri being her VA, and she's often seen as a show's sex appeal. But after seeing Midnight, it's clear why she wears that outfit, especially the color. Red is associated with power and dominance, values that Cinder tries to emulate. Cinder wants everyone in the room to know who's in charge. But it's also a callback to her past. Red was the color that the madam wore. Red was the carpets that Cinder cleaned. Red is even the sash that she wore as a child. Red has been present her whole life, and it's often associated with something else: anger. The red in Cinder's outfits represents her anger. Anger at her abuse, anger at the system she was brought up in, anger at the world who ignored her. It's like dawning that Red is saying she's really risen above her abuse, while also saying that it made her this way, that it made her better, that it made her stronger. And while it's not obvious until we see Salem, it's interesting how much Cinder emulates her as well. Little details like the glass jewelry she wears or the diamond-shaped symbols on her clothes mirror Salem's style, and we see these motifs even more in her next outfit. Cinder's Mistral outfit is more muted and sophisticated than the Beacon outfit. She wears a longer crimson dress with gold accents, black pantyhose, and black heels. Her left sleeve is noticeably long to conceal her grim arm. She wears a black glass eye patch to cover her disfigurement, and she's also cut her hair just like how it was in the beginning of the end. If we put her outfit side by side with Salem's, the similarities become even more jarring. This is shown by the whole silhouette, like the high collar, loose flowing dress, and the obsidian jewelry. Besides this being her Mistral outfit, I'm also calling this the Raging Fire outfit, as this arc truly ignited Cinder's character. What we know about Cinder's persona is flipped as we see how much Ruby's silver eyes affect her, and also ignites her vendetta against the latter. Instead of being the calculating chess master she was in the Beacon arc, She's much more sullen, angry, and reckless. Ironically, these moments show more of her humanity, even when the grim arm is slowly eating away at her. It also does represent a loss of confidence and power in her as she attempts to hide away her weaknesses. Add to that, much of her beacon persona is constructed after Salem. The queen-like air, the huskier voice, even some of Salem's phrases are copied by Cinder. It seems that with her sudden fall from grace, she clings even more to Salem, her ideal for power. Since we're continuing with the fire symbolism, Cinder's Atlas outfit could be the ash to her flames. It's an all-black outfit with gold accents, which contrasts her previous red and gold color scheme. She wears a black top and shorts, topped off on a long black cape worn over her left arm. She also has lace-up thigh-high boots with red soles. She also wears a few black and gold armbands, and she retains the blue feather accessory and jewelry from her past ensembles. On a side note, I kinda wish they kept the cape's interior red since it would be easier to see her in dark environments, and it's a great mirror for Salem's design, who also wears black with a red interior, but I digress. Her Atlas outfit is drastically different from her main outfits. It looks more haphazard, less put together, but it still has that femme fatale image she goes for in her previous outfits, but a more feral one at that, and this outfit definitely reflects her more feral approach to achieving her goals. We also see that Cinder's grim arm extends into her left shoulder, and it has a more raw, angry appearance, and more of that raw anger is expressed when she fights for the Winter Maiden's powers. It's clear that this outfit best reflects Salem's influence on Cinder, as evidenced with all the black in this outfit, and with how dark this outfit is, we get a darker picture of Salem's treatment of Cinder. There are multiple instances where she mocks and belittles Cinder. You could debate this is because she's tired of Cinder's mistakes, but I think Salem's reinforcing that hierarchy and power difference between her and Cinder. So there's an interesting duality shown in Cinder. She emulates her abusers to feel powerful herself. She subconsciously takes pieces of her own abuse into her outfits and mannerisms, and yet she hides all evidence of her own abuse. If we ignore the Vital Festival and spy outfit she had, all her other outfits hide her neck scar. It makes her feel strong while also ensuring that she doesn't feel that weakness again. It's not a new concept for characters to take inspiration from their mentors, family members, and much more. RWBY designs Crescent Rose at the Crow's Harbinger. Blake's Gamble Shroud is a combination of Adam's Chikuto and Sienna's Kusarigama, and Yang's fighting style and whole color scheme is very similar to Tai Yang's. We even see this in Emerald, who takes bits and pieces of Cinder's outfits into her own. The emblem on her back is similar to Cinder's tattoo. There's also small hints of red in her outfits, representing Cinder's influence on her. And after meeting Cinder, she also starts wearing heels, which thieves normally won't wear for obvious reasons. It's a subtle yet pivotal example of the cycle of abuse in action. This all makes Cinder's "without you, I am nothing" statement more horrifying. Is there any surprise that Cinder feels she has no identity of her own, only what she can copy from her tormentors? It's clear that Cinder's outfits mirror the power figures in her life. When combining her past and image, we can also assume a core part of Cinder's philosophy that there are two kinds of people in this world, the abuser and abused, the puppet and puppet master, the tool and the wielder, and to her, the only way out of abuse is to beat them at their own game. But she never seems to realize that she's another cog in a fucked up machine. Cinder's past and mannerisms further colors her motivations and outlook, and this also bleeds into the few relationships she's made. In Volume 3, Episode 7, Beginning of the End, we see how she meets Emerald and Mercury. First she meets Emerald after Emerald steals some jewelry using her semblance. Then she meets Mercury on the pretense of finding Marcus Black, an assassin of Mercury's father. After seeing Cinder's background, she has glaring similarities between her new accomplices. She was a starving orphan with no one to care for her, like Emerald, and she was someone who killed her abusive family, just like Mercury. And her relationship with them is interesting. We see two different perspectives about Cinder through them. Mercury has a more cynical, realistic view of Cinder. She's simply an employer that demands his services. But to Emerald, Cinder is her savior. To her, Cinder was someone who cared for her when no one else did. On some level, Cinder is aware of their similarities and uses that to recruit them. Just like how Salem is her fairy godmother, Cinder is Emerald and Mercury's fairy godmother, giving them an opportunity to rise above their current path. She makes sure to praise them for their gifts and success, but also makes it clear who's in charge when they step out of line. At best, this villainous trio here has a certain kinship, a whole us against the world mindset, wreaking havoc on a world that ignored them, belittled them. However, Cinder's past and current ideology prevents her from getting any closer. Concepts like love and kindness are fake to her, and their sole purpose is to use them to her own advantage, so that she doesn't get betrayed again. As a result, her relationship with the two is still overt with manipulation and abuse. For example, she's not above playing with Emerald's feelings to increase Emerald's dependency on her, and she's not afraid to raise a hand to her if Emerald protests.
So what's in it for me?
We don't need him. Everything was going fine. Ugh! Do not mistake your place.
But it's possible that Cinder did have a semblance of care for them. She was angry when Mercury told Emerald again that Cinder doesn't care for her. However, she didn't deny his claim. The more cynical of us can assume that Cinder hates being called out on her shit. But her look of anger quickly turns into sadness once Mercury reveals that he works for Salem now. Cinder doesn't try to order them around anymore, and she retreats into herself, and this final slap in the face provokes Emerald to leave Salem's faction. Going back to Cinder's original motive of freedom, I think Salem used Cinder's past to tailor her to her own goals. She molded Cinder's original wish into a hunger for more power, so that she feels destined to be a maiden, a vessel to wield all the maiden powers. It's shown that Cinder respects and defers to Salem, but there are times where she goes against Salem's wishes. However, it's clear that Cinder sees Salem as the key to more power. As mentioned earlier, more power leads to more freedom for her. But sometimes, there is no freedom, only bigger prisons. And this is most obvious when Cinder's pain with her grim arm is paralleled with her electrocution by the Madam. She's never escaped their abuse, and for a second, it seems like Cinder was about to realize that as well. But Salem snuffs that thought out with one move. We expect Salem to hurt Cinder more, to get even more angry, perhaps even kill her. But no, what she does next is even more terrifying. She apologizes.
And I've realized it's all my fault. You've fought your whole life unwaveringly for what you want, and here I am holding you back, instead of lifting you up.
And this moment brilliantly showcases Salem's expert manipulation. Besides Salem being that terrifying eldritch being, it's a classic strategy abusers use. While overt abuse is dangerous enough already, it's the nice abusers you also have to look out for. The ones who know your dreams, your desires, and twist them to serve their own goals. The most dangerous abusers make their victims think that they're not abused. Salem knows that punishing Cinder will drive her further away, or worse, it will cause her to rebel completely, so she reels Cinder back in with some kind words and a sweet apology, and Cinder is back under her control again. For now. Cinder needs to realize that what she truly wants won't be possible through Salem. While Cinder is Salem's key to victory, one who's fashioned herself as the Black Queen, Cinder is still her glorified pawn in the chess game against Ozpin. Another important moment for Cinder's character was Watt's rant, the moment where he roasted her so bad that she roasted him back. His rant was one of the most unforgettable moments in Volume 8, maybe in the whole series. Here we have a rare moment of two villains going at each other, each with different approaches for their goals. Watts reveals they implanted a virus in Penny for her to self-destruct, but in doing so, Cinder is unable to get the Winter Maiden powers, so she flies into another rage and holds Watts over the ledge. Instead of begging for his life, Watts lays it all on the table. It's clear that he's known Cinder for a while, enough to have some idea of her past, because how else could he have pushed her buttons that well? Anyway, Watts' rant as Cinder serves as the audience's surrogate. He expresses sentiments that much of the audience feels towards Cinder, which on the surface make this moment more satisfying, but this rant also serves as a double-edged sword. Yes, Watts' roast makes Cinder realize that brute force isn't working, and forces her to reevaluate her actions, but Watts is still an Atlas elite, just like the Madam. He's the epitome of all that you can't stand about Atlas, from the constant power hoarding to the air of superiority. Watts states that just because Cinder has suffered doesn't mean she's inherently worthy of power. He implies that she doesn't have what it takes to get what she wants, but he does. However, Watts is proven to be just as entitled as Cinder. After all, the reason he joined Salem was because Ironwood chose Pietro's project over his. And while he is right on the importance of intellect with strength, what he has done with Penny is short-sighted. It'll be easier to have the maiden powers in proximity with Cinder when the time comes to destroy Penny, not have it go to a random person. For the time being, he's made his grudge on Pietro take precedence over Salem's plan. So then, we expect Cinder to just drop Watts right then and there. She's already made big on that threat, but since it's not working, Cinder has every reason in her to just kill Watts and head to the vault herself. But she doesn't. She pulls him back from the edge, walks away, and cries. It's a moment that takes us all by surprise, because underneath that grandiose, power-hungry persona, there's still shreds of humanity left on her, and although Cinder has a notable superiority complex, it's clear that she has enough self-loathing to think that maybe Watts is right. In this moment of introspection, Cinder finally relearns and refocuses on what it means to be an effective villain, and in these scenes, Cinder is most powerful when she's at her most powerless. She falls back on what she does best, using manipulation and subterfuge to claw her way to the top. Cinder relearns and seemingly takes Watts' words into perspective. She places their desires before her own, Watts getting the chance to destroy Atlas from the inside, and Neo getting revenge on RWBY. While her betraying Watts and Neo was criticized, it makes sense for Cinder's best interest. If Cinder failed again, Watts and Neo would have told Salem the truth, especially since Salem was planning to use Lamb's last question. In her mind, Cinder also rationalized that, on a moment's notice, they would have also hung her dry without a second thought. And she gets everything she's ever wanted. The relics, Team RWBY defeated, her critics silenced, and Atlas destroyed. The only thing she doesn't get is the Winter Maiden powers, but the end of this volume is still a clear checkmate for the Black Queen. It's almost paradoxical. It seems like Cinder changed, yet she still remains the same. But no matter how long she puts us this bravado, she's still the same angry, traumatized girl from so long ago. To Cinderella's happily ever after isn't being with a prince in a shining castle, but to never feel that weakness and fear again, even if it means being the monster herself. Now, what could this all mean for Cinder's future? What will happen to her at the end of RWBY? There are several paths Cinder's fate could take. She could stay under Salem's watch forever, never changing, never growing, maybe getting killed off by Salem when she has grown tired of her. Or this could happen if or when Salem realizes that Cinder has deceived her. Then her grim arm fully takes control and consumes her, and becomes a monster like the Hound. She's then finally defeated by one of the heroes, such as RWBY, Jean, or even Emerald. If that happens, I definitely see one of those three finally defeating Cinder, since the show has either set up rivalries between them and Cinder, or they have more personal ties to her. Another possibility could be Cinder defecting from Salem. Maybe she ends up becoming a third-party villain, like Ventress and Darth Maul from the Clone Wars. She's already shown signs of being discontent with Salem. Perhaps she'll even become a greater threat than Salem as the story goes on. And if we're going by tropes, she's definitely RWBY's Dragonwood agenda. This is a villain below the big bad, but they have different goals from their superior. I mean, she can already breathe fire. The last possibility is the most daring choice, redemption. Cinder being redeemed will definitely be a shock to us viewers, especially since she's not the biggest fan favorite in RWBY. At this point, a redemption by death seems most likely, considering all that she's done, and it's a middle ground for the fans who want to see her redeemed, and everyone else. Now, Roosterteeth could try doing a full-scale redemption for Cinder. It will take time in the story, since Cinder hasn't shown remorse for her actions yet, but she is the Fall Maiden, the guardian of the Relic of Choice, and her being the Fall Maiden fits her karmic journey. The lesson from Fall is to be grateful for what you have, and Cinder has a long way to go before realizing that. There may be a point in the story where Cinder is forced to reevaluate herself again, and realize that the path she's going down will never truly give her what she wants, and that it won't fill that empty, burning void in her soul. The question is, will that ever happen? And since the Fall Maiden deals in choice, Cinder needs to realize that there is always a choice, to atone for her mistakes, to turn away from her current path, to create her own destiny, and yet she still acts like all this is her destiny, this is her calling, and there's nothing to stop her, or there's nothing she can do to stop it. But if Cinder wants to be redeemed, she has to make that choice herself. It can't be Emerald, it can't be Ruby, it has to be Cinder, and Cinder alone. What I am sure is that she won't be under Salem's thumb forever. Whether that means she'll go rogue, redeem herself, or become the final boss, Volume 8 has set a turning point for her development. But honestly, I won't be surprised if she lasts until the end of RWBY, and that eventually she will make a choice that will define RWBY's story. But we'll see if this ages like wine or milk. Thank you for watching this video, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.